So hello, everybody. Welcome to our town hall with the judges tonight. Thank you so much to Eric for facilitating this and to Dan and Paul for joining in and lending us their expertise. We do have some questions that I think a few questions that we've gotten, but hopefully you guys brought some questions with you to ask tonight. So just so that we're 100% clear on the purpose of the meeting, it's basically just for general information and general questions. So we're asking that you not name any specific adjudicators. If you do have any very specific issues with anyone, of course, there's that post-event survey that gets sent out every week. We ask that you complete that the week of the show, but I mean, you can always, you know, if you remember, oh, I never filled it out from 3 weeks ago, you can still go in and do that. There's no deadline on that you're not allowed to submit that. So certainly if something is a need that you feel needs to be brought to Eric's attention, please do that so that we're not bringing up very specific issues or names tonight. So this is for the well-being of everyone. We ask that you just be on mute, and then if you would like to speak, you can raise your hand or you can unmute if you don't know how to raise your hand. And with that, I'm gonna send it over to Eric to take it away.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all for being here. The bottom line is, for us, the adjudicators, and in our place of service, we believe in community. You know, we believe in that everybody who comes to an event, a main event, and who is part of the main circuit deserves the best service possible in regards to the event. There is inherently in our activity, you know, a challenge in regard in that place of what it is we deliver as adjudicators and what you receive. We're always working on that challenge. I want to let you know that Dan and Paul and I meet once a week. We talk about the past weekend and the commentary that adjudicators make. We have access to commentary. I want you to know that as a community, we meet on Tuesday evenings for an hour plus, and we address specific issues that may have come up, or we focus on a specific caption. And then, you know, we're actually taking steps now to have consultations with individuals, adjudicators. And that'll start tomorrow night. And then we have some other ones coming ahead. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes to support your adjudicating community, who in turn would hopefully deliver what they need to deliver for you in this process. About those past post-event surveys, you know, you need to know that everything you put on there is private. It's very private. We don't, you know, it's not like I look at the name of the person who submitted and run over to the judge and say, do you know what they said about you? That's not happening. I may, on occasion, depending on the commentary, I might say, hey, this is said about what you offered this week, and you need to know this. I won't say who it was from, but it gets them thinking in a direction of, okay, well, I can do this better. I should be more thoughtful about whatever it is the comment is about. So we do that. So I want to make sure. The other thing about those surveys is it triggers us to put together some commentary or some point of view from our standpoint in our Tuesday meetings. You know, we might find common theme. We might find something as, oh yeah, we should address that. We do that as well. So I want to let everybody know that offhand, just so that you know that that's happening in a consistent manner, and those aspects about what it is that we do to support the community. And then therein, here's this place where we are this evening. We wanted to come join together with you all and say, okay, what it is that we can help you with. We have some other questions set up if we need to, but ultimately it's a town hall meeting. So it's about all those things which you do as instructors, designers, directors, that may need to be addressed or you may have questions about. If it's logistics, Ginny's here and she knows all those aspects of logistics. Obviously, you have some board members here as well. So, you know, we are, again, in a place, and our cornerstone, I have to repeat this, is our service to you all as a community. So with that in mind, let's open up. We have, if you know, down the bottom under reactions, you have raise your hand, or at this point you can unmute and talk. I don't think we have anybody on top of anybody's. Questions, concerns, briefs, documents, declarations, or otherwise. And there's a grand pause. It's okay. Let me throw one out. Why did our number go down this week with a better performance? Great question. I think the first thing to be aware of is perspective. Now, you went into your event with a competitive event and you worked on your show that week, and you would probably address some of the issues that were brought up in some of the commentary. And all that is appropriate and clear, and you see a path. And then the team goes out and they knock a performance out, and you're like, oh boy, that was great. So now you're in a place of expectation. You're on the other side of, okay, so our number was blah, blah last week, and it'll be this week, because obviously we're much better. Now, the other side of all that is there is a different panel. Generally, I mean, I know how these panels are working, with maybe an exception of a caption or two, depending where you're at, but mostly general, there's new people looking at this through their discipline, through their perspective, through their journey of the season. And now number management may be different. There is the place of dynamics. Was it one number in a small gym? Was the next number in a big gym? There's that. There is the place of how many teams are in your class. Were there 2 teams or 3 teams, or were there 9 teams? That's contest dynamics. And all those play into how a number can fluctuate. And you need to know, as I think you're aware, if you look in the back of the sheet, you'll see that there is that place of number ranges. And, we are doing our best to consider where we believe a number belongs. Some of the captions, some of the time, most, all. And again, there's borders in there. Nothing is definite. This is none of, as Giorgio reminded us all the time, none of this is science. We are adjudicating live art performance by students or young adults, and it has inherent challenges in it, and we're doing our best to manage those. And sometimes, sometimes there are mistakes, and people may put a number down they shouldn't have, or wasn't aware of, or whatever that might be. But that's the human side of all this. That's a part of this as well. So I hope that, I don't know if that triggers any questions or any conversations or anything you want to bring up in regards to number fluctuation, but we can certainly address that right now.
I think I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Isaac from Snyder Winterguard. What happens when the judge gives a really good tape? I mean, a really good comments, and it's all positive, but when you look at the score doesn't equal. It doesn't have the same weight as the comments. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I totally do.
The judge gives a terrific, oh, you guys did this, you guys are doing this, you guys are doing this. And then when you see the score, or when you see it in a particular category, you go, wow, what kind of rubric is this person using to evaluate this?
No, I understand, Isaac. And it's not an isolated issue. We remind adjudicators all the time that they're, and my adjudicating friends will probably say, oh boy, we've heard this a lot. We call it scoring significant commentary. And what we're asking adjudicators to do is make sure when they're making their commentary that the listener knows whereabout in the rubrics, as you call it, in the criteria reference, a team will be. Is it moderate? Is it good? Is it superior? There should be words that you hear that may trigger you. They should always match an observation with what your team is doing and then how well. Now, if they're matching what, as in what is always on the money and how well is always good, well then, Isaac, that's an issue. Because they ranked you in a certain place, they came up with a certain number, and that's why there's an example of something I need to know on the post-event survey. Paul or Daniel, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's exactly, exactly what I was going to say with the scoring significant commentary. I think maybe a little history about, how judging has evolved over the years might help too, where usually we were out trying to find mistakes. And now we've gone to where we're trying to reward whatever category you're in. So it's that fine line between, and just what Eric said, that scoring significant commentary. It's we want to be as rewarding as we can possibly be, but we still have to be honest with the groups to know where they are on that scale. And and like you say, that those surveys are the perfect place for us to work to address that. So.
But just to add something to that, but if you're using certain words, if you're using words like superior, and you're using certain words like that, and when you turn around and you look at the sheet, shouldn't your commentary be based on those words, those adjectives that you use in that rubric? Because in the back of the sheets it is a rubric, right?
Right. Oh yeah. And I'll say this quite clearly: if any judge is using box five commentary, and then if any judge doing that right now, I need to know that as soon as possible, because it will be addressed very quickly. Because honestly, Isaac, then that is that's a false read. Because not that you can't do that, and frankly, if as the weeks have went on, you would have been bumped up in a different class, because that can happen relative to the classification you're in. So all I can say right now is that do mistakes happen? Do people make mistakes? Yes, but that is an application error. And oh boy, in fact, I would say, Isaac, if you don't mind, you can send me an email. I would like to know who that was, because it needs to be addressed.
What class is your guard in?
You're on mute.
Independent regional A.
Judges are encouraged to be encouraging with regional A guards, but there still should be a reality of where the commentary is on the criteria. Do we try and support regional A guards as much as possible? Yeah, absolutely. But again, you should get a good reading by what they're saying of where you are on the scale, so to speak, or how well you fulfill the criteria on the back of the sheet, which you have sheets evidently. Since you've looked at it, thank you for that. A lot of people don't. But, I think at times people see being encouraging as being overly positive, I think. And, trying to give, I don't know if your performers listen to the commentary or trying to make the performers feel good about themselves. So at times do people go overboard? Yeah, absolutely. Should they? No. So I guess that's the only answer I would have.
It is to Paul's point, to support that, and just our philosophy is, a job of an adjudicator is to address what they see at whatever level it's been presented, and it's not about finding mistakes. See, and that's a transition in our activity. They are, especially to Paul's point, especially regional A. We want people to feel good about performing. We want them to continue on in the activity. And we just, finding mistakes, that's past in a way. Now, do we need to be aware of issues in maybe effect or construction or performers' vocabulary? Yeah, we certainly do. We want adjudicators to make that note and to pass that on in an appropriate way. Yeah. Good question, Isaac. Thank you. Any other?
There was a question in the chat, Eric.
Oh, yeah.
It's also from Isaac. It was what happens when you can't hear one of the judge's tapes. And I'm not sure, Isaac, that would be something I'd like to know about, but we do have our tabulators are listening to the beginning, middle, and end of every tape you get. If there is an issue with one of the adjudicators' tapes, they forget to turn it on, they hit a wrong button or whatever. We do ask, and for the most part, they will usually do a wrap up, a summary for you at the end of it. But please feel free if that happens at a show and you just really can't hear the tape, to make sure that you can even go to the critique room, let the tabulator know, we'll look into it, because everything should go through, and if it doesn't, you should be getting at least that recap.
Jenny, one thing that happened early on in the season,
Mhm.
and it wasn't the judge's fault. The audience was too close to the judges, and they were trying to speak. And so I guess they were trying to
Oh.
speak softly, and it happened at one of the early shows. I know
Yeah,
that was one
absolutely.
issue, and it was not their fault. It's just the fact that we've been working seriously to try to make sure there's space around the judging community so that they don't have that issue. But
It's been
in the
much
early
better,
season,
I
it
will
did
say.
happen where people were
Yes.
cramming in. So
Mhm.
that could have been one of the issues.
Thank you, Pete. I also, back to Jenny's point, I mean, we trained tabulators, and here, you know how Comp Suite works. It's all, there's no adding anything, it's all there. So now we're actually changing the names in the fall, because we're realizing there are technicians delivering information for you, the listener. So, we know that that's a very important step. And then the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of commentary files that have gone out, maybe even thousands, I don't even know. There's likely, unfortunately, the laws of probability say we're going to have some that there are going to be issues with. The big thing about that is, and we've gotten them already, sometimes some people put that in a survey and they say, look, I can't hear this adjudicator. And then we go back to them and say, you got, check your mic, and then we also mention it to the tabulator, says, look, you have to have a closer eye on this adjudicator. We had an issue with their sound. Thank you. Any other thing openly right now? I could take it down the list of questions.
I have a question.
Yes, Samantha.
Hi, I'm from Mattawan. So I know there's a lot of classes that, especially toward the beginning of the season, were humongous, and there was a lot of promotions and things like that. And I know, obviously each team's different and whatever, but there were at times kind of like head scratchers where, you beat a team by like 2 points, and then like the next week they like 5-pointed you and got promoted. So it's like, how does sometimes like, how does that kind of, I guess, work in that? And obviously if they have like a better show, obviously that I know that takes into account, but there's just been times where it's like someone who had a relatively low score one week got like blasted the next week and got promoted. So just how does that work?
Okay, so part of this, again, I'm probably repeating myself as we go through this at times, but it does matter who the panel is involved. I mean, if you have, dare I say, if Darren or Paul and I are at an event, we come with our background of decades of experience, and we might see a team, or even this season nationally, and we might see a team and say, okay, that's not, according to my criteria I'm looking at right here, that is not a whatever, a novice or regional A or something. So numbers could pop that way because of the dynamics of the adjudicators at the event, what they've seen, as a personal point of view. That, I guess, part of our challenges, and I'm speaking of somebody who's been on your side decades, is expectation, and is, our season's going such a way, and then all of a sudden, like, what happened? How did that take place? And then I kind of have to take a deep breath, and I found this out at one point in my life. I used to have aneurysms about it. And now I step back, and you get to that place where you have to let go of all that and know that humans on this side are trying to help humans on that side, and we're all trying to help performers on the floor. And is it always right? No. Now, in regards to fluctuations, you're going to see that. I would say to you, if you don't see fluctuations, then there's something wrong with the system. For a variety of reasons, not major. Now, I dare say that, and we saw a couple. Now, I'll let you know also that we review the numbers after every weekend. And yeah, there's a couple, ring the bell and talk to the adjudicators about something involving at a given event and a number that went up significantly or went down significantly. And then we asked them to give accountability. We asked them to give us some insight about that.
I would like to add one thing into that, especially early season when you're dealing with a lot of incomplete programs. Those numbers can fluctuate even more. And groups progress at different rates. So however the group is choosing to progress their season, some people spend a lot of time early on with training, not as much on the show, and then the show starts progress. So groups just progress at different rates. People respond to incomplete programs differently. So it's hard to get, and I'll say it, it's hard to get an actual feel for that range until you start seeing more complete programs. And I think that causes some fluctuations that may scratch some heads sometimes too. So.
Good question, Samantha. Thank you.
And I think we have so many color guards in Maine at this point that are very competitive in different divisions. And Lauren and I can contest. We go back and forth all the time. Sometimes you're like, it's a nail biter because the groups are very competitive. So there's a lot of good things. We do flip back and forth, right, Lauren?
I would add, and I think I know Paul and Dan would agree, as the season progresses, those differences lessen. As shows are complete and performers are more rehearsed and the training is more clear, then there's a compression in the range of numbers. And in that compression, now things get even a little more dicier. We were asking adjudicators to be very careful about their choices, to be accountable, know that there is, and you'll probably see more of this in that compression, more of what we call subcaption or integrity. And they may be up in vocab and down in excellence or vice versa and over. All those kind of things will happen much more as the season progresses.
And Lauren, Lauren, I'm not sure, do you get the sheets that have the meanings of the tense on them at all?
The mean in the scoring reports, you mean?
Yeah, or, on the score sheets, do they have that? Because, that's an important thing, especially as this season gets to this point, where if you start seeing 1 to 2 tenths difference, 2 to 4, 4 to 6 tenths, that tells you some pretty big stories about your group compared to other groups. So it's important, I think, for directors to be aware of what what we're told to address in that way and how we're supposed to feel about it.
Those are on the sheets for sure. So hopefully people are referencing their sheets to see what those differences in score ranges mean, hopefully.
There is, and here's something to be aware of too. I mean, insignificant differences is a 0 or 1. So that means a 0 means ties, subcaption ties. Now, every adjudicator knows that what the bottom line is, there cannot be any ties, and Comp Suite throws off bells and whistles. But there can be subcaption ties, particularly as competition gets tight like this as we move on. And then slight differences, 2 to 3 tenths. Moderate differences, 4 to 6, and at 7 tenths and above, it's significant differences. So there are those managements to Dan's point that we're aware of, and and the other side of the coin is that you should have some knowledge to it, and it's really on the sheet. It's on the sheet. Good question, though. Good point. Anything else open? And I'll let me throw another question or another point that was brought to us, and I'll read this through. How is it that Team X scored higher than Team Y this week, but lower than them the other week? I've gotten this question about overall and about captions, especially early season. I think we kind of answered this one with teams being incomplete. There's an obvious answer, but also not sure people understand performance of the day, which is an important one, and that scoring higher than other teams is not a benchmark. So that's a good point. Now, you may have your ordinals across the board at one show at all ones, and then the next week you go into a different dynamic. Now, the contest dynamic means there's different teams involved. And then as Pete pointed out, because the size of our competitive community, now things get mixed up. as they will certainly when we come together at championships. So there is that place of, again, as I mentioned, expectation, like, oh God, we all ones, yay, we're going forward. And then all of a sudden it's different. So, team X versus team Y and the variety therein is a part and parcel to our competitive arena. I mean, it's an it's what happens when we do what we do, particularly to all those points we made earlier about the intensity of competition, the tightness of ranges, complete shows, that makes a big difference too. So I think we kind of hit on that a bit.
Eric, one other thing, you may throw Team Z in there, where you had 2 tenths between X and Y. All of a sudden, Z has to fit in between them. So that pushes the numbers apart just by, the ranking process.
Right. Yeah, and we have adjust and refine as a part of adjudicating, impressions, comparisons, analysis, adjust and refine, because we want adjudicators to do the best they can in regards to number management. And that's when that happens. That movement can happen during a competition or at the end of a round, and adjudicators are putting in their numbers. But then there's that step of verification, which is sent over to the tabulator, who then reviews the numbers and then goes to the chief adjudicator if there's an issue. So we have several steps in place to monitor number management, hopefully to everybody's benefit.
Something to consider too, because we are a large group, a large region, some groups have not competed directly against each other yet. And so some groups might be coming into championships and have never seen group A or B or C, and then all of a sudden it's going to be a different experience as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pete. Okay, let's take this one on. When the GE judges aren't in agreement, does that mean one of them is incorrect?
Maybe not. There's 2
Well,
GE judges because there's probably more personal experiences brought into GE than the other captains, and it's maybe a little bit more subjective. There is a criteria, but there's different backgrounds. If you're more theatrically based, if you're more marching band based, you may have different values and proclivities that you work to minimize, but they still may be there. And generally I've found if 2 GE judges disagree, probably the average is pretty right.
Well, and one thing that, Eric brought up earlier, this is not a science.
Right.
You're bringing
Subjective.
you're bringing different life experiences and backgrounds into it, especially in the GE caption. So, and I don't know who, the whole thing about being right or wrong or incorrect, I don't know who decides that. That's the question. I think it's not really a science. So,
and believe me, generally if 2 GE judges disagree, they're talking about it before you are and trying to figure out what they value differently.
yeah.
It is always an evolutionary process for adjudicators too. I always, we like I said, we meet once a week and to a purpose, to a reason, because we know that these are there are aspects about adjudication that get complex, and I know the general effect is one of those areas where, well, wait a minute, you had him first, I had him 7th. What did I miss? So what did you see? And then here's the thing. And we carefully try to manage this, and just in terms of considering all the POCs, the points of comparisons, on the front of the sheet, there's all those points that come in. And we find that if we listen to commentary, and if one of the judges missed a point of comparison, it could be mood or musicality or whatever it might be in effect, then that has impact. That has impact on the bottom line, whereas the other judge may have commented on it, and then maybe the soundtrack wasn't a positive experience, and one has picked it up, one hasn't, one valued that more than the other. There are fluctuations now, and we're doing our best consistently to ask judges to really apply themselves in regards to those points of comparison. Now, and I dare say, it's not a word by word thing, it's not a checklist thing. But you as a listener should hear a judge use their own language at times, certainly, but you should know that, okay, they're covering fully, they're doing everything they should in regards to the sheet and the expectations of the caption.
And if they agreed all the time, you wouldn't need two of them. You know, that's.
There's that logic, yes.
Yeah.
Anything else about that? Anything else you want to chat about? It is unique. We know, two general effect judges. It's one of those things. It's side to side, same sheet. You're like, how could they be different? Well, they can be different for sure. Yeah. Okay. All right, here's a good question. Does it mean that our repertoire is too easy if the achievement score ordinal is higher than the repertoire and the students are capable of doing more? I know my friends have insight about this as well, but I think the first thing to start with is we've gotten away from, there's a consideration, but we've gotten away from, here is your repertoire number, here's your performance number, and they're tied together to a point. But the fact is, our place as adjudicators is to give the team as many points possible, whenever possible, and whatever subcaption. And our adjudicators are asked to look at a subcaption and rank it unto itself in comparison to other teams. Now, what that means is, okay, this team's excellence was really strong, and if I'm going to rank them, they're going to be higher than this team, and that may mean that number is higher than the what, or the repertoire number. So by performance. So there is this place of, please know that but if your performers are doing better than your repertoire, it does not mean that you're weaker as a designer, that the effect is weaker by any sorts. There might be deficiencies in it that you might want, and that would go on the other side too. There might be performance deficiencies. They are what they are, and we're asked to adjudicate, to rank first and foremost teams. So we're doing our best to do that. But just so we know that's an old school thought process. It takes time to break away from those kind of habits. If my compatriots have anything to add about that?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. It's
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a new mindset for us as well as for the guards. It's been just the last few years, but I think it's all coming from a place of rewarding you as much as possible. And if we break it apart between the I'll say comp and excellence on my part, that gives an opportunity for a group that is achieving at a really high level the opportunity to get points in that area where maybe before they might not have gotten those points.
And that's something I don't think has really gotten out to the units to the level it needs to. And that's probably one of the biggest points of contention and a critique, because people don't get that we are judging the subcaptions individually. And they still think we're giving that message that your repertoire isn't good enough because your performers are above it. And, that's just not the message anymore.
I hope that helps. And by all means, if there's any questions right now, any concerns, please, this is a chat. This is a place to have a conversation about it. No? Okay. All right. Let's move along. How can my team create better effects? Do we need to have props in order to get more GE points?
No.
No, please don't.
I think we all said at the same time. Ours is a place of considering all that is on the floor. There is production value, but a production value may be a white floor and an appropriate costume. It doesn't have to be. There's no checklist about, okay, well, they have, look, there's backdrops, there is a point where, in regards to repertoire, that we might have to ask, I'm not sure I understand how that prop works, or what's the message on the prop, or how that works with the music. There might be aspects about, there is that place of production value You know, you know, it's one of those things. Was it put together by a middle school art project, and does it look that way? And if it's to a reason, good. And if it isn't, okay, then there may be a question of production value. But we do not whatsoever consider the absence of props a negative or the presence a positive. It just depends how it's built in within the program. Isaac, I don't know if you want to be, if you're muted, but.
I was disagreeing with you when you were saying that, because it's how you use the prop.
Yeah.
You know, does it enhance the show or not? Or, you know what I mean? Or are you just putting a prop out there just to put a prop out there? Because anybody can do that. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
the prop has to make sense. It has to, all right, if I was a judge, if I was judging, I would say, okay, why do you have this prop out here? What's the significance of this prop? How is it enhancing the show? Does everybody, you know, I know everybody gets what I'm saying, but I was muted just now, but I was talking out loud.
No, you got it, friend. You got it. Thank you for your insight. No, that's right. You're right on. Anyone else about the prop question or the placement of props? I mean, you know, everybody, all of you invested a lot of time and a lot of thought in your programs. And, you know, I dare say that, yeah, there are organizations that have a bit more financial support, and it lends to them in a way that maybe somebody else doesn't have that kind of financial support, and we understand that. But it's all about, you know, it all comes together on the floor in the moment at the event. And, you know, a team might be refined in costume, beautiful props, beautiful floor mat, and a team might come out with none of that. And yeah, you know, the other team can be ranked higher in effect because of what the performers bring. I mean, it's really that's really a bottom line aspect. Yeah.
Well, and that's a little bit to address the first part of the question. You know, is how can my team create better effects? And that's pretty broad question, but like, I think one of the keys is what you just mentioned, is what the kids bring to it, or the performers bring to it. And just making sure that your messaging is clear. But I mean, there's a lot to that, but at this point in the season, I don't know where you would go with it, but.
Right, there is an investment, and Paul, we had a conversation last week with General Effect, and there are aspects about aesthetics, you know, and Paul's point was, look, it's not always about smiling, you know, it could be sinister, and it can be, you know, flatline if that's the intent of the designers, and if that's what the soundtrack brings across, then all that works. You know, we remind judges it's not a checklist of how you feel as much as what the performers are bringing to the event in the moment and what their intent is. Now, the word intent and manifest, well, that's an important aspect. I mean, it might be, if it's happy, pretty music and the team on the floor is sad and droopy, well, okay, we might have a question mark about correlation and connection and mood and musicality. So just so we're aware that, you know, it's sinister is as rewardable as happy, smiley. Anything else about effect that you might are interested in? Anything else we can help you with?
I would just add, I've had a couple conversations with people where they go, I don't feel like I got credit for this moment. It was this really, really cool moment that this kid did this ridiculous trick and they went under the prop and they threw this thing and then they did a sit roll. And, you know, I think just considering where that was in the soundtrack, if that had like a correlation with the soundtrack, sometimes people don't necessarily clap for that because, and also, did you direct the focus there? Like, or was there something else competing with that event? And how did you build in and out of that event are all like important considerations for when, you know, when people have questions about, well, I don't feel like I'm getting enough credit for X, Y, or Z, you know?
And I think one of the big things, Lauren, is you all of a sudden see a tumbling run going across the floor and there's been nothing anywhere in the program that would take you or lead you to have a gymnastic approach. I mean, we can appreciate the individual skills of the student, but it may not fit in the show and it may actually be a negative.
To your point, Lauren, I know that Carl made a clear point about to WGI judges that we have to be careful about what he called shiny objects. You know, and his point is that the tendency has been, and in part, and it was interesting because he felt like, in part because of what happened after COVID. At COVID, there was a lot of people at home learning to do a lot of tricks to video, and then they manifested in shows abundantly. You know, and one of the things that we consider is evidence and proof. Evidence is, okay, look at that young person, that performer did, wow. That, and oh, look at that young person doing something else, and oh, look, oh, by the way, it's the same young person. So there's a point where adjudicating one team versus another, that you may have evidence of that kind of skill range, but the proof is in the team. Does the team do that? What is the team's contribution? You know, how does everybody contribute to an effect? And it doesn't have to be everybody all the time. No, not at all. It's part of the range and variety of effects. But you hit some key points, Lauren, about how they got into it, how they got out of it, what's happening to the ear that would manifest such an event, or is that just somebody saying, check, hey, you know, Susie can do this, let's use it. You know, okay, so it may be apparent to us in the construction of the program that either compositional or repertoire wise may not be fully to your benefit. And here's the other thing: we are not a meter for applause. You know, sometimes people believe the adjudicators like, oh, everybody's clapping, they must be worth points. Yes, there are aspects about what it is that teams do, and you'll notice, it's not hard to realize this, that and particularly, I think it's in a place of empathy, where performers will scream and shout when something goes up in the air. Not so much when it hits the floor. You know, it hits the floor, they're still applauding, they're still connected. You know, and they let go that part of the equation that says there's completion, or there is, you know, an ending that worked to the initiation, to the risk. They're in their place of empathy, they're about the risk. Well, ours is this totality, how you got into it, how you got out of it, what it meant to the soundtrack, what it meant to the design. You know, is it aesthetic, is it emotional, intellectual? There's a lot of things going on about the shiny object that Carl Lowe has brought up to us.
That might be a good place to talk about where in the manual or in the information that you have about, you know, finding information on emotional, intellectual, and aesthetic effects, and the different ways to make effects. That I'm not sure all the instructors are always, you know, looking at the same information that we are, and I think that's a good place to address that.
There is this point where, you know, even so much as what a team, let's say this, vocabulary versus composition, and the depth of composing choreography versus, you know, bean counting, if you will, in IA. There's a difference there too. And the IA folks have they're on a mission, and they're gonna be accountable to what your performers are doing, certainly through vocabulary. And our end is like, well, why is that working the way it is working to the soundtrack? Because downstairs, they have the meter of music, but they're not listening to the music. They're paying attention to pulse. They're aware if there is no pulse, you know, and there's an inherent challenge to that. But it's the upstairs people, the ensemble or the design judge, and then the ensemble, old school design judge and the effect judge, and in that place of, how does that fit musically? What does that mean into the program? And oh goodness, that's very rewardable because of how, you know, I hear a pizzicato string idea and I see that ostinato out there in that Sabre event. So there's a deeper correlation. Now, aesthetic and intellectual and emotional. Often, you know, emotional, people say, oh, that's easy, right? Okay, so we have this, let's say the mass flag event. Now you get into a place of, what does that mean? In our activity, in some places, that's a checkpoint. And of course, because it's a place where you feel the whole gym and every performer is engaged in what we call in the old school, a shout event, a shout moment, an ensemble statement. And again, part of that's going to be how's it correlate to the music, how you got to it is big, and then what you do with it. Now, it might be intellectual. It may be, the way you pull the team, half the team down, and now you have this entirely different texture by high and low, and that's a refined event. It may be aesthetic because all of a sudden you pop open a flag and this flag has an eyeball on it and the show is about who's looking at you or something. There's an aesthetic there, like, oh, I get that, or words, or there are and it's endless about the range of choices that you can make in regards to emotional, intellectual, and aesthetic. I'm just scraping the surface. I don't know if Paul and Daniel want to add to that or refine my comments.
I think this is something, go to the rule book. It's pretty defined within it.
I dare say, and then Carl Lowe works hard on this with the steering committee and with the adjudicating committee. That rule book is supposed to have everything you possibly would want. And I tell you, to this day, when I fly to an event, it's in my bag and I open it up and I read through it. Because as an adjudicator, I know that there's my guidance. There's where it's at. And the more you are familiar with it, the better it is that you do what you do for your performers. And the better you are in having a conversation with an adjudicator in critique.
And just so that everyone's aware, you can find the WGI manual in Comp Suite. You just log in and go to resources and then you download it. I think it downloads as a zip file, at least it did for me. It downloads a zip file, but it's way more than just the rules of like, you can't be over 22 and be an A class. It's literally, it goes into the definitions of each caption and the words that are on the sheets. There is a ton of amazing information on there that if you have not yet done that, I strongly encourage you to download that and read through the words that are there to help you. Sometimes, there's some weird words. And so if you're not sure about something that a judge is using, you can find the definition in there.
Very good point. And it really brings to, the next question was, it's a good question. What is dimensionality? You see that word. And we're in a place where we've considered it certainly, and in equipment it is space. It's a dynamic quality, and so it's high, medium, and low. And when you're looking at variety of effects, it plays into it. Dimensionality plays into it. In composition, it is the use of height, and as I mentioned in a moment about texture. The quality of texture, the dimensionality is involved in that. Sometimes how a team uses a prop will elevate an idea above, and it has in itself inherent height. Again, my compatriots could add if they like.
Well, if the way we were taught was about the 27 points in space around the body, and how the group that uses those, develop in those 27 points of space have opportunities in dimension. And there again, it's in the manual when you talk about it, but it does create interest. It just creates a lot of opportunities by using more dimensional qualities. And one of the things that we have talked about is using your own voice and not using judge speak, but there is certain terminology that is specific to each caption. And it's important for, I think, instructors to look at the manual and get that, because some things it's just more concise to use the right word. And I don't consider that judge speak. I think that's using the proper terminology to reward the groups for what they're doing. But I think that's an important thing that, again, as Lauren said, to get out of the manual, to use that, review that all the time. So
appropriate terminology is right on, because we are driven, even if we use more vernacular, we are driven by what the points of comparison are. And if a judge fails to do that, then it's your place to say, hey, you didn't talk about this aspect, whatever it might be. And just have my equipment sheet. It might be, you didn't talk about range and variety of equipment skills. I'm not sure, did I miss it? And they might say, no, I was talking about this or that and use those words. And you might say, okay, but you're making them accountable. Adjudicators are accountable to the points of comparison. And to hear the word, if they said, oh, that's strong variety for you, or you broaden the range at this event with the Sabres, then there it is. It's, it's filtered in their mind, and that's important for you to know.
Hey, Eric, do instructors have access to the Bloom? The different words and where they fall?
I don't believe so, Paul. The Bloom, I have to see if I can dig one up for you. The Bloom is a particular tool that we in our community that the adjudicators use. It was introduced maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. And it is a way for adjudicators to use a broader range of words. Here's one for you, and hang on, because this one is a big one, and we are fighting it tooth and nail. There are certain words that if you hear them, make a note and make it a trigger. I can see I can imagine right now my adjudication community is itching a little bit. Nice. No. Nice is a word that is just blasé, unclear, and uncommitted to. Appreciate. It's funny. I used to do, it was one thing, I appreciate that. Well, and here's the thing, here's the improviser. What do you appreciate? What about that does that adjudicator appreciate? So they might use that word, but it has to go deeper. But we say, avoid it. Just avoid it. Because to Paul's point, we have the Bloom now. We have this tool we use that says it's the English language. It's one of the most confusing languages in the whole world. We have all kinds of words for all kinds of things. We don't have to use nice and appreciate. The other one is okay. Sometimes we may find ourselves putting a marker down as in, okay, let me watch this, or okay, I'm following this through. But if somebody sees something and okay, now I will go back to the human side of this, and maybe someday, if we're so blessed, everybody on this call tonight will be an adjudicator. But you will find that there are inherent challenges in how you manage language. We're always looking for a what and a how. We're always looking for recognizing what the performers are doing or designed, how it was designed, and then what is its achievement, how well. Those should be connected. Sometimes you get a lot of what, and then it becomes an imbalanced number, or imbalanced commentary will give us an indication that, okay, that's why there's confusion, because this adjudicator is only addressing what they're doing. They have to address how well. Now, that said, it's not easy. I'm saying what's obvious. It's a consistent, ongoing challenge for all of us. I mean, here between Paul, Dan, and I have been doing this for decades and decades. Some more than others, but
thank you, Eric.
Yes, thank you, Eric.
But to this day, it's a challenge. To this day, so to be aware of that, But I want to make sure you knew that how important language is. And to Paul's point, they actually gave us a tool and said, "Oh, here's this tool. You can use this," and it has helped. It has broadened our language. That was a good point.
But I'm thinking, Eric, what they know is, do they? With that Bloom, the words kind of grow around the Bloom, fitting like box 3, box 4, box 5.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm concerned at times we use those words, but do instructors have any idea where they really are falling in the criteria, or where do they fall, in the scoring range?
That's a good point. I mean, I think there are points where a word by just the way the word here's mine anyway. This guy.
Yeah.
It's called the Bloom. I'll see if I can do it, because it goes from uh-oh to oh, that's really great. and it, when you say somebody's stunning, striking, brilliant, masterful, speechless, I mean, those words can be applied to any class. These words aren't just words for us for world class. These words are for anyone. Sporadic, undefined, sparse, limited, segmented, minimal. Okay, now you hear words like that, okay, we have a problem. There's a problem with that particular either event or design choice or vocabulary, unfulfilled, unreadable, absent, not enough information. Well, okay, so you get the idea, and that's Paul's point. Now you go down here in the middle range and you get applied, solid, promising, transparent, understood. And then, they even went so far as you can see my ink to add my own words, sufficiently, developing, mounting, moderate, restrained. These are some of the things that we use as tools, and it does, to Paul's point, you need to know that there's a range of words that should give you an indication about where a given number or a given observation comes from.
We could
Laura?
post the comp suite if you guys have that. We could post it to comp suite so people can download it.
I will ask permission because
Perfect.
it comes
I know
from,
it's been distributed in the past by some clinicians, so some unit directors might have access to it from past clinic presentations, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, I'll put a joint offering out to Mount Olympus and see what comes down.
Perfect. And it would be in a login only area like our manual is.
Right.
If that.
Thank you.
And just so you all know, it is 8:58.
Oh, okay.
And just like that, the fun ends. Anything else that anybody would like us to address, to send out information about, anything in general as we close here? Okay. I think in a place of service, I really appreciate you all taking time and to be here. Because we know there's all of us on this side, even us as people are a certain age, legacy judges, that's the word for it. We've all taught many years, and we understand. And in fact, it is in that empathy as designers, instructors, that we're on this side. And we want to help and be fair. And and we want to thank you for putting this together, for the e-board and making this happen. We want to thank you all for being here. And I want to thank Dan and Paul, my compatriots, and Ginny for her support. And yeah, that's a take. Anything else? All right.
And thank you, Eric, for putting together such great panels for us so far this season, and for all the work that you're doing to try to ensure that the adjudicators we get in Maine are the greatest ones. We appreciate all your help and all your partnership with that.
Thank you. It's an ongoing project, and we'll keep at it. All right, folks. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.